Welcome aboard the Ear to There podcast, the podcast that'll help you vacation like a pro in any Disney destination. For those of you standing, please sit down and hold on throughout our journey and get ready to learn how to have the time of your life. And now, here's your host, Phil Gramlich.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ear to There podcast. I'm your host, Phil Gramlich. I am also the owner and operator of Ear to There Travel, a Disney-specialized travel agency. It's my job to take away all that stress, all that anxiety, and all that time that it takes to plan a Disney trip so you can focus on the really fun things like having a great time with your family and friends and enjoying the magic. And as I say each and every week, I do all that for free, right? So from resorts to transportation to fast passes to dining, special event tickets, golf tee times, whatever you think of, I can do all that for you at absolutely no extra cost to you. You can find this podcast, my blog, or request a free, no obligation quote over at eartotheretravel.com. Also look for me each and every, hopefully, every Thursday night on Facebook Live. That address is facebook.com/eartotherephil. Each and every week, I'll bring you the latest Disney news. We'll sit, we'll talk, we'll have a good time. You listen to me jibber jabber on, and I will answer any and all questions that you might have. It's a lot of fun. We do trivia nights sometimes. I give away prizes. You never know what's going to happen on the Facebook Live shows. Again, that's facebook.com/eartotherephil. All right, now that the business is all over with, let's get to the show. This is episode number 78 for the week of July 17th, 2017. Now, grab a drink, grab a snack, and as a famous mouse once said, on with the show. That's not getting any better. On with the show. When Disney was planning to open Epcot Center in 1982, they had announced that there would be no Disney characters in the park. Then it was announced that there would actually be two new exclusive to Epcot Center characters. These two all-new original Epcot Center characters were collaborations from Walt Disney Imagineering, but mostly came from the brain of Tony Baxter. And of course, they were the lovable and oh-so-missed Dreamfinder and his little friend, the Figment of Imagination, or Figment. And with so many changes rumored to be coming to Epcot, which, speaking of changes, is no longer Epcot Center, I wanted to have you hear from a man who was very instrumental in getting the Dreamfinder and Figment off the ground. As a matter of fact, he was the original Dreamfinder walk-around character in Epcot Center in 1982. And since he was the original Dreamfinder character, he was also the original puppeteer, well, keep that between you and me, of Figment, the purple dragon that would sit on his arm in the park. So without further ado, here's my interview with Ron Schneider, the original Dreamfinder and a man who has more than 40 years of theme park experience. Enjoy. I'm really excited to welcome my guest on this week's show. He's been a puppeteer, a ventriloquist, a magician, an actor, and a writer, but to Walt Disney World fans like me, he's probably best remembered as the original walk-around Dreamfinder character in Epcot Center. Mr. Ron Schneider, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Phil. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it, and I'm excited. My biggest bummer, one of my biggest bummers is I didn't get to Epcot until 91. So I didn't get a chance to meet you back then. So watching the videos now, I was doing a little research and watching, I saw a bunch of YouTube videos with you in there. So I was kind of bummed I didn't get to meet you as the Dreamfinder.
Yeah, I was only there from 82 to 87 as Dreamfinder. A fellow by the name of Steve Taylor was the second one hired, and he lasted for 15 years and he's got the scars to prove it.
Yeah.
Most of the time, people come up to me with pictures of Steve and want to know if that's me, but usually it's Steve.
Did they ask you for an autograph on a picture that's not you?
It's happened, yeah.
Yeah. You know what's funny is, Ron, I'm sorry to kind of take a sidetrack right away. I saw, just in looking up some stuff to talk to you tonight, I saw that Joe Rohde was in like a promotional video as a Dreamfinder at some point.
He was the model for the character when they were first putting him together.
Oh wow!
And he played the character in the Dreamfinder School of Drama, which was the blue screen show that was up in the ImageWorks.
Oh, wow!
So yeah, Joe was one of the models. In fact, I was getting on a plane a bunch of years ago. I was walking through first class, and there's Joe Rohde. I tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Joe, I want to introduce myself. I spent 5 years of my life trying to make my nose look like yours."
Yeah, I remember when I worked at Animal Kingdom back in the early days when the park just opened, and I would see him every day he was in the park doing something. I mean, he was running around and fine-tuning that park and trying to get it, nothing was ever, it wasn't like set, when it first opened.
Of course.
So he was always there. So really quickly, before we get into the whole, I want to talk about the Dreamfinder, of course, and your history with the company. But before we do that, I just want to give the listener a little bit of info on who you are. Did you always want to be, like an actor and a performer, or is that something that you kind of learned, when you were a kid?
When I was a child, my biggest influences were the kid show hosts on TV. Grew up in the 50s. And there were live human beings that hosted kid shows. So Engineer Bill, Skipper Frank, Sheriff John, Bozo the Clown, Mark Wilson on the Magic Land of Alakazam, Sherry Lewis and Lamb Chop, Paul Winchell, Jerry Mahoney. These are all live kid show hosts, and they were kind of my friends during the day, and I like to imagine myself doing what they did. And they were magicians, ventriloquists, and puppeteers, and so that's what got me interested when I was 8. By the time I was 8, I had my own ventriloquist dummy. I had puppets and a magic cassette, thanks to my mother. And the other big influence, when I was about 2.5 years old, Disneyland opened. My father had done some of the original air conditioning work on the park. And so we were there the day it opened to the public.
Wow.
And I grew up going to the park. And so I kind of got into acting. When I was about 7 or 8, I started doing plays in the local park. And we'd go to Disneyland maybe twice a year. When I was about 14, Walt passed away. And it just struck me what a tremendous influence he had on my life. And I was still doing plays and everything. And then one day I went to Disneyland and just realized there was something going on here that was far beyond people just going on rides, that this was a form of theater where the audience actually steps up out of the stage and the show stars them. And I found that very exciting. And as a performer, I decided that I wanted to perform on that stage. And I always consider myself, or since I do a two-man act, but the other person doesn't know their lines. So that's the guest. So I've always gotten a kick out of acting with the guest and drawing them in, getting them to play spontaneously, imaginatively with what I do. And that's what I've spent my life doing.
So you grew up at Disneyland then, which is super cool. I didn't realize you were there on opening day. You were there, was it called Black Sunday, right?
I was there the next day. It was the first day it was open to the public.
Okay. Not the whole media thing and all that. That is crazy to me. I have the video of, the DVD of the Walt Disney Classics DVD that comes in like the little tin case that has the opening day of Disneyland on it. Right. And I've watched that thing a million times, and seeing like Frank Sinatra drive the Autopia car with Frank Sinatra Jr., who was a kid, and so cool to be able to just look at that. I can't imagine kind of being there at that time. I'm just fascinated by like Disneyland in the time of Walt Disney. That's something I was always kind of, I was telling you before I hit record that my daughter is so excited to get out there and experience it for the first time, to kind of walk where Walt Disney walked. So cool that you were able to experience that back then. So you grew up a Disneyland fan, and am I right? Correct me if I'm wrong. You worked in Disneyland, you started there, or your career there, or did you start over? I did read that you were at Magic Mountain, right, as well?
My first theme park job was a wardrobe issue for the Christmas parade in 1970 at Disneyland. I just worked there for 2 weeks, and I worked backstage in a circus tent doing a wardrobe issue to the people who were in the Christmas parade. That summer of '71, was the opening of Magic Mountain, just north of Los Angeles, and I got a job there as a ride operator on their Autopia cars, which we call the Grand Prix. And I worked 10 years at the Universal as a tour guide out there. I worked at Magic Mountain, first as a ride operator, then working with wild animals, and then as a street performer. And then 10 years later, in 1980, I was hired on at Disneyland at the Golden Horseshoe Revue, understudying Wally Bogue, which was my dream role. It had been for many, many years. And I did that for a couple of years. When Epcot opened in '82, the company brought me out here to Florida, and I've been in Florida ever since.
Wow, so you actually understudied Wally Bogue. That is like the coolest thing ever.
I think so. I think so too.
Yeah, like I can't imagine. The guy's a legend in the company and the Golden Horseshoe, and he came out. I remember reading that he came out to Walt Disney World to open up the Diamond Horseshoe right for a while. It's just such a cool thing. So you came out in, you said '82. Did you come out to Central Florida, to Orlando, to do the Dreamfinder, or did something else bring you out there?
No, the company brought me out here. I was working at Disneyland. Wally had retired, and I didn't get to the full-time job as a replacement. I would have been understudy to a very wonderful fellow, Dick Hardwick, who got the job. But about that time, I saw a presentation by Tony Baxter about Journey into Imagination. He talked about Dreamfinder and Figment, held up a picture of the characters, and I took one look at the characters and thought to myself, that's what I want to do next. Especially when I found out that Dreamfinder was going to be the only Disney character at Epcot.
Right.
So I let the head of talent booking, it was a fellow named Sonny Anderson. I went to Sonny and said, I would like to do this character if you're going to have him out there live. And the company moved me to Florida.
Wow. So you get out there, and do you have to audition when you get out there? But you already have. You already have the part as a walk around character, or did you have the part as a model? What exactly did they kind of move you out there with the idea that you were going to do?
They knew they wanted the character strolling around, but that's all they knew about it. Nobody had ever played the Dreamfinder before. Nobody had ever done a character quite like that, being both a face character, a puppeteer, and representing Epcot Center, which you're not just going to be posing for pictures. You're representing the spirit of Epcot, right. The inspiration, the innovation, all of that stuff. And with my background, by that time I'd been in theme parks for 12 years in a lot of different major roles. I'd created a lot of different characters. I had a background in puppetry and magic. So Sonny felt comfortable just handing me the character. I didn't have to audition. However, I did want to learn to do the character's voice to match what was going to be in the ride. And so a friend of mine at Imagineering got me a recording of the ride months before it opened. And I had perfected an imitation of what Chuck McCann, who did the voice of the character in the ride. I could impersonate him impersonating Frank Morgan, who was the original, was the Wizard of Oz. So I practiced that voice, and my friend at Imagineering heard me do it, and he brought me in, and I got to do a couple of the lines in the ride. So that was the only sense in which I actually auditioned. It was kind of left to me to create the walk-around character and come up with what he was going to do and how he was going to do it.
That's so cool that you were actually on the attraction as well, that you had some lines that were in there at the end. It was, correct me if I'm wrong, you did like the last few lines of the excuse me, you would hear when he got off the attraction, like the exit spiel, I guess, or something like that.
Figment and I have enjoyed our journey into imagination with you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So it's so funny that I never put that together, that it was kind of the Wizard of Oz voice. And then as soon as I listened to another interview that you did. And as soon as I heard you do it, I was like, oh my God, of course that's what that is. I never really heard it before. And I had heard the Dreamfinder voice 100 times and it's just clicked. And it was very, very funny and kind of a cool moment for me to realize that that's what that was. And I saw you do, I think it was you, correct me if I'm wrong. There was a YouTube clip of you playing the Dreamfinder. Was it on the Today Show with Brian Gumbel, I believe?
That was the very first thing I did on opening day of Epcot Center.
Wow.
I did. I got in a costume. I went right over to the Italian Pavilion, which is where we shot that. And when we finished doing that, I went over to Journey into Imagination and shot the opening TV special with Danny Kaye and Drew Barrymore.
Wow. That is so cool. So that's the first time you ever played that character, ever? Like never? Wow.
That was the first time I did it in the park. I did a preview film called Dreamfinder Run, which you can see footage from in that Danny Kaye clip. That was shot a couple of weeks before Epcot opened.
Wow. That had to be pretty intimidating that all of a sudden you're, being broadcast to millions of people. Kind of like your test run on live TV. That had to be super nerve-wracking. I can't imagine.
Yeah, and the really frustrating part about it is both those clips are up on YouTube, and my fiance keeps showing them to everybody. And
man.
Frankly, the beard and makeup didn't look that good, and I was trying a little bit too hard to play the character. So it's not the way I want to be remembered. But there you go.
Oh well, I'll tell you what. To be honest with you, I watched it and I thought it was. I didn't notice any anything that wasn't good about it. I just thought it was cool that stuff is out there. I get it that you may not like it as much as you liked your other stuff later, but it's very cool that you were basically you were the two original characters of Epcot. That's kind of a neat kind of, trophy to kind of put on your mantle there. I mean, so what was it like for listeners that don't know? You were the Dreamfinder, of course, but you also were Figment basically in the park as well. Well, not on the attraction, of course. Was that a big transition for you to be able to? Because I know you said you had experience in ventriloquism. You had your first dummy, I think you said at 8. Was that like a really difficult thing for you to kind of master? Because he didn't talk, right? The Figment you carried didn't talk.
Yeah, when they were creating the characters and came up with the idea for the strolling character back in Los Angeles, they brought the Figment puppet to a couple children's birthday parties, the way I heard it. And the kids loved Figment as long as he didn't talk. When he talked, he was kind of scary. He had a very high pitched, manic voice, and he had a kind of a scary look to him with his big eyes and the horns and everything like that. So they determined that Figment wouldn't talk. The way that he and I worked, he talked to me. I could hear him, but nobody else could, and I can imply what he was saying. Like if a kid petted him on the nose, he'd turn to me and say something, and I'd say, no, Figment. They're not spoiled. They all smell like that. But it was definitely a learning experience trying to play two characters convincingly. When I walked into this thing, I knew immediately that I wanted the guests to see two characters, two living, thinking characters that were not the same. I didn't want the dragon just to hang at my side while I was talking. So I worked very hard at learning to handle him, hold him, manipulate him in such a way that you could see the two of us were separate people. I wanted people, when they're coming from a distance, to see two characters, and then when they come walking up and talk to us, to experience these two characters that have different thought patterns. And I had to learn how to focus him without looking. I had to be able to sense where people were and turn him so that it looked like he was looking straight at them and not just somewhere off into space. Wow. I discovered that, just to get kind of into the weeds about this, I discovered that a Figment, there's a thing called a magic triangle. The Muppets use the same idea, that if the character's eyeballs, the tip of its nose, and your eyes are in line, it looks like he's looking right at you. But if he's off just a little bit to either side, it looks like he's just staring off into space. So I had to learn how to aim him without looking to see that I'm doing it. I used to practice backstage on the bus going back around backstage. I practiced on the other Epcot Center employees. And I'd practice doing it, asking them, does it look like he's looking at you? And so I worked on that and various other things. I go into excruciating detail about that in my book. But that's to give you an idea of what we went through.
Yeah, so that's really something that I never would have thought of, that, when you're bringing the other character to life, you have to he has to remain focused on you when you're talking, and then he has to remain focused on, the guest when the guest is talking. And I can't imagine having, for someone that I couldn't even use a paper bag puppet. I can't imagine doing something like that. So do you have like favorite, do you have moments or memories or favorite kind of angles you would take with the guests then to, did you have a skit that you would kind of run out there and try to do every day, or was it just kind of fly by the seat of your pants and see what the guests would do?
Working with the guests, when you walk out there and you really don't have to do much. I mean, you just stand there. They're going to want to take pictures. They want to get autographs. But I wanted to do something more than that. Here was a character that represented so much. Had just come off a ride with this wonderful message that imagination belongs to all of us. And all of Epcot Center is a place of inspiration as well as entertainment. And so I wanted to get the guests to play with me, to experience that same feeling they had in the ride with the meeting. But, all they wanted to do was have their pictures taken. So I had to find a way to trick them into playing with me creatively. And I had to draw them in. And so I found it around for a while. Then one day, this child walks up to me, and I acted like I'd never seen a child before. I said, "Oh, my goodness, what are you?" And he said, "No, I'm a boy." A boy, wow, that's a man. To turn around, and I treated him like one of the sparks of inspiration that the Dreamfinder collects in the ride, and that started me thinking about the way that I would interact with the guests and playing with that creatively. So what would happen is I would walk out into the garden area, and there'd be a mob of people. Now, I didn't have a character attendant like the characters have nowadays. All the other characters have attendants. I was out by myself in imagination. So I would usually work with my back to a wall so that there wouldn't be people standing behind me. And I would move around in kind of a semicircle, so I would form a cloud of people around me that I could keep an eye on. And I would make a mental note of when people show up, and I would, one at a time, say, okay, you next, and they'd come up. And then I would start to play with them in such a way that we would interact before we took the picture, and then we would take the picture, we get the autographs and everything like that, and then I'd get the next people. But the way that I would play with them would be entertaining for the people who are waiting. And this way it turned into a show. So I would have 4 or 5 different standard ways of interacting with a family or with a particular guest of a particular age. And I would rotate those in such a way that people didn't see the same thing twice.
Right.
I found that people, if you present them with a wizard holding a dragon, there's only 4 or 5 ways they're going to respond anyway. And once you have multiple answers for each one of those approaches, you can look like it looks to the guests like everything that happened has never happened before, because they can't imagine that anyone else has responded the way they have.
Sure.
Because they came up with it themselves. So it was this whole science of writing and improvisation and crowd control that I got to explore as the character. My whole 40 years in theme parks, working at all the different places I've worked, it's been kind of a lifelong study for me. And as I mentioned in my book, this is all a lot of stuff I write about in my book is that science of drawing the guest in and doing it in a corporate setting where you have to party. I used to party on cue. That's the way I always said it. Yeah. That I have to show up for work and I have to party with all these people, these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, all day long. I have to party. I got off work. I don't party. I got off work. I go home, watch TV.
Yeah.
But it became a science for me.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine. Again, being a former cast member and having to be on for the guests for my 8 hours, or 7 hours, whatever it was in that day. I loved it. I loved being in front of the guests, but I was far from a performer. I was, sweeping up popcorn, or I was standing at the desk at Fort Wilderness or Star Tours, or, it's a little bit different for the regular cast members than it is for someone like you. So you did mention your book. I want to make sure everybody knows what it's called. It's From Dreamer to Dreamfinder, Life and Lessons Learned in 40 Years Behind a Name Tag. And I think that is available on Amazon, I believe, right? Still, you can get it there?
It's on Goodreads. It's at Barnes & Noble. It's on Amazon. We've got paperback, hardcover. We've got the audiobook. It's on Audible, too.
Cool.
And you can get the audiobook, and if you have trouble sleeping, they'll put you right out. It's 9 hours of me talking.
So you did the recording yourself?
Yeah, I did it myself. And there's it's both a memoir about my 40 years, and then the last fifth of the book is a textbook about writing and performing theme park shows.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, so I admittedly, and I apologize, I do not own your book, and I am embarrassed that I don't. So I will purchase it this evening after we are off, and I will send you a message after I finish it. I promise to do that. I feel bad that I haven't read it yet. But so I have a weird question for you, and I'm sure you've gotten this before, but speaking of the Dreamfinder and how long you've been in the theme park industry, and so in October 1998 they close Journey into Imagination, and it's closed for a year, and then they reopen it with the Journey into Your Imagination. I want to call it an attraction, but I don't know if that's exactly what it was. You were living in Central Florida at the time. Did you? I know I have to imagine you were bummed out when they closed the original attraction. Did you go and ride that middle version at all?
Oh yeah, sure.
And dare I ask, what were your impressions when you went through it the first time?
Same as everyone else. It was terrible. It was horrible. It was a whole experience.
It really was. And I like talking to you about it, someone who was so close to the original, it has to be this kind of a devastating experience. Like, it was the first version of it was, and I'm so pro Disney on my podcast. Normally it's not even funny, but I also am honest and I call it as I see it. And that was just a terrible idea to replace it. And then to take the Dreamfinder and Figment out completely, it was just a horrible call. I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah.
But did you? Okay, so then they realized that pretty quickly. Within 2 years they replaced it to, and then now what we have now, the Journey into Imagination with Figment, which is good, and in my opinion, it's cute. Figment's back. Do you think it? Do you enjoy that one? Is it one that you can ride? And I know you've done, you've been over there, and I've seen videos on YouTube with you there. Is it something that you can ride and enjoy, or is it just like, no, I can't? It's still not good because the Dreamfinder's not there.
My problem with the ride has nothing to do with Dreamfinder. It's more to do with Figment. The fellow who wrote the new version made Figment a pest. With a character like Figment, one of the things that Tony Baxter said to me when I was first hired back in 1982 was that Dreamfinder loves Figment and nurtures him, and that's what the whole building's about. That's what the whole Epcot's about, is nurturing young people and imagination and talent and inspiring them. And when you went on the original ride, Dreamfinder, you're there when Figment is born. Dreamfinder creates Figment.
Right.
And takes him through this whole experience. So at the end of the experience, you completely identify with the character. It leaves you, the last scene is Figment is standing in the middle of this room surrounded by all the possibilities of what he could do with his life. And you are that character. You come to identify with Figment. And my relationship with the dragon and everybody's was one of nurturing and loving. And so now they come to this poor guy who has to write the new version of the ride back in the early back in the 2000, and they say, "Here, write something with Figment." And so they put him in the opening scene, and there's this character saying to him, "Well, not you. Go away. You're not supposed to be here. You're not. You're." And they treat Figment like a pest. It's interesting. In the first Star Wars film, C-3PO is beloved, but in the second film, in Empire Strikes Back, they say to him, "Will you shut him down? Quiet, be quiet, go away." And suddenly C-3PO becomes a pest because of the way he's treated. And in the ride as it is now, Figment sprays you with skunk spray. You get to see his toilet hanging from the ceiling. This is not my Figment. This is nobody's Figment. He becomes a pain. So that's my major problem with the ride. Also, the fact that the ride is supposed to be about imagination, not supposed to be about the senses. My feeling on it is the same as Tony Baxter's. It just is. It's just a mess. It's just a mess. I do not need them to bring back Dreamfinder because I'm scared to death that they'll do to Dreamfinder what they did to Figment. They won't know how to handle him. This is why I so love the comic books.
Yeah.
What Jim Zub did in the Marvel comic books with Figment and Dreamfinder is he brought them back together. He brought back the Figment we know and the Dreamfinder we love, and went back to the spirit of the original ride. He actually quoted the ride. Whatever they do with it in the future, the message is more important than the messengers. And if they can come up with something in the big redo this down the road that is going to tell the same kind of story, they don't have to have Dreamfinder in it. As far as I'm concerned, they really don't need to have Figment in it. But I know he'll be there represented somewhere. But what they do need to do is tell the story of imagination and tell the story of your imagination and inspire people the way that we did back then.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I've been listening and reading, and I'm sure you have all the rumors about Epcot and what's coming up, and Inside Out has been rumored to be coming to the pavilion, and is that going to be an attraction? Is that going to be in the theater? Who knows? And then you keep hearing that that Figment is going to be there in some way. I mean, at least in the rumors that I've heard. I agree with you. I hope that he has more of that innocence, or that more of that kind of, like you said, the original character. And it's funny, I never really looked at it the way you just explained it, is that he's a pest. And now that I'm thinking about it and kind of mentally going through that attraction, you're 100% right. Like, it's a completely different character than he was in the original attraction. He's not this kind of wide-eyed, not naive, but kind of naive, like, character looking to learn as much as he possibly can. He's more of a pain in the butt. He really is. Like, yeah, you're exactly right about that. So do you? I mean, you said you don't hope, or you don't need them to bring back Dreamfinder. Do you think, like, deep down in your heart of hearts, that they're going to continue with Figment? Do you think he'll still be a part of the pavilion there? Or do you think, his time is, with all the, Disney doesn't seem to have these days a big need for the nostalgia lately. Do you think that they'll cut them and they'll say goodbye?
Bottom line, Figment sells.
Right.
Both runs of the comic books sold out. The shirts still sell. The merchandise still sells. They just finished doing polls of the audience, asking them if they remember Figment, if they want Figment around. I think Figment sells, and he's a character with limitless potential, most of which has been untapped. The latest rumor I heard is that the 3D film will become a film about Figment. So I do not know, but I suspect he'll be around someplace.
And I'm totally cool with that. I'm happy if they keep him in the pavilion and move him to the film, and if they're going to bring a new attraction into the pavilion, they bring Inside Out into that pavilion. It makes sense to me. It's a natural fit for, I mean, maybe not for imagination, but for old school Epcot. I don't know what we're going to be looking at with old school Epcot, with them bringing in Guardians of the Galaxy possibly, and whatever else they're bringing in. But times are changing. I just recently did an episode about that, about all the rumor changes, and it's amazing just looking at what changes they're talking about bringing to that park. Like, I don't know how you feel about, the changes to the films and World Showcase, the Ratatouille attraction that's rumored. Are you happy to see Epcot taking that track? Or are you sad to see it's not that edutainment park that it used to be?
I always withhold any judgment till I see what they do. I'm not going to fall into that trap like everybody else online does.
Like me.
They can't get rid of Maelstrom. It's hard. Maelstrom is my favorite. No, it's not. Maelstrom is not. It's nobody's favorite ride.
Ron, I have to agree with you.
The Frozen ride was a brilliant makeover, and and all the people who tore their hair. And now I will be perfectly honest and let you know that I will seriously miss Impressions de France. I think it's one of the greatest things ever done, and I love that film with all my heart. But anything else they want to do, that's fine with me. I will judge it when I see it. I will not get mentally upset about rumors or about anything being torn out because it doesn't do any good. It wastes time. And it just gets people up. And whenever I see anything like that going up on YouTube, I always immediately post, "Bring back Mr. Toad," just to say to them, "Yeah, just shut up." Just shut up. Here's the thing. The bottom line for me is we're fans. We're the fans. We're the public. We're the audience. All we know is what we've seen. We don't know what they're up to. They have people whose sole job for Imagineering is traveling around the world and looking at new technologies and gathering story ideas and inspiration. All we know is the submarine voyage, 20,000 leagues under the sea. That's all we know. And so all we can do is sit and whine and go about losing things. All we can do is complain that they took this out and we have no idea what they're going to show us. And then, how could you possibly imagine Mission Space? How could you imagine Tower of Terror? You've never seen anything like that before. Right. We've seen drop rides, but we haven't seen what they're doing with it. So I just say, everybody just shut up, sit down, relax, and look forward to the day when the next Space Mountain opens, because that's what I've done all my life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
And now, mind you, 50% of the time they blow it. Tower of Terror in Florida opened the same day as Food Rocks.
Right.
And so nobody's going to hit it out of the park all the time, but when they do, we travel around the world to see it, because we know what we're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, look what's going on with Pandora, the world of Avatar. I was there for previews May. I'm sorry, I couldn't remember when I was there. But I got off. I don't know if you've had a chance to do Flight of Passage over there. I got off that attraction and I was just dumbfounded at how great it was. Mm-hmm. And I was blown away. And people, I did it, in this day and age, everything has to be, on Facebook Live or on a podcast. So I was doing both as soon as I got off the attraction. I was podcasting. I was recording a Facebook Live video to get my reaction. But it really was, I couldn't put it into words how great it was. And for months and months, and actually years, since I saw the model out at D23 a couple of years ago, I had said to people, I think it's going to be amazing. And I had heard from so many, folks that were like, I don't get it. I don't get why Avatar is a thing and why it has any kind of staying power and why we would want that in the parks. But after being in that land and after being on that attraction, they proved all of them wrong. Because it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I think the best attraction. Now, I can't compare it to the classics. I'm not going to compare it to Space Mountain or Pirates of the Caribbean or Haunted Mansion. I can never say it's better than those. But as far as what Disney's put out there as far as new attractions in the last 15 years, maybe 20 years, it's got it all top. It's an amazing attraction. And the Na'vi River Journey is, I almost feel bad for, because that's an amazing attraction as well. But I feel like people are just like, it's a boat ride. And it's not. It's so much more than that. It's the animatronic is amazing. But one thing that I've noticed about it, and I've noticed, you ride Journey of the Little Mermaid at Magic Kingdom, and you look above your head, and you see, air ducts in the ceiling and vents. And you ride Na'vi River Journey, and you look above your head, and you see alien fauna and bugs and aliens, and they just hit it out of the park for me. I think they did a phenomenal job. Mm-hmm. And I think I don't know how you feel. I mean, I think that with Star Wars Land coming, that's just a little a sneak peek at what Imagineering can do these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I wanted to get into you. Not only did you work as a Dreamfinder, you had other jobs in Walt Disney World as well. Did I read that you were involved? I don't know if it was the earliest days, but the earlier days of the Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor show.
I was on the opening crew of Monsters Laugh Floor. I was there for about 2.5 years.
What a great attraction that is! I love so underrated, right? I love that attraction. What was that like? Were you one of the ones? Were you a performer? Were you a writer? What did you do at Laugh Floor?
I was part. There were 20 of us hired before about 5 months before the show officially opened, and we were there to work with the monsters, developing their comic skills, developing the computer interface that would do the animation, developing the audience surveillance system so we could see and hear the audience, and develop the comedy material that would go into the show. And we spent about 5 months on that.
And were you there? You obviously said you were opening theme. So did you get to interact with the audience, with the crowd? With the jokes, like taking their jokes, picking their jokes for the show, that kind of thing?
The fellow who works with the little boy Wazowski, Marty Wazowski. The fellow who works with him actually picks the jokes from the audience. I was always one of the double heads, and did the other character whose name slips my mind, Buddy. I know
Buddy
Boyle.
Yeah.
Buddy Boyle. I was Buddy Boyle, and then I would do one of the double heads.
Wow! So what a cool thing! And little did the guests that are sitting there know that they have a Disney icon who's playing Buddy Boyle in the show. That's so neat that you were doing that. And I just love that show, and I think it's so underrated as far as Magic Kingdom shows go. I tell clients and friends and everyone to go see it because it's so funny, and you just don't realize how funny it is to get in there. And if you have a couple guests that kind of play along and is it? I wonder if it's better that they play along, or is it better that when they don't? Do you have more material when they don't play along?
It works either way. That's the whole purpose of the live performers, is that we work at creating stuff so that if you play along, then it'll be funny. If you don't play along, it'll be funny. We have to deal with both of those all the time. So we can't have any bad shows. We have to be consistent. The whole philosophy behind working in theme parks, designing them, performing, is that we have to deal creatively with operational reality. If a guest comes in with a sour mood, we have to be able to deal with a sour mood. If the guest doesn't want to play along, we have to make them play along in spite of themselves. Because the guest is our operational reality, and we have to deal creatively with what they give us and draw them in so that. I mean, if they're going to pay $20 to park, and they're going to pay $100 to get into the place, and they're going to pay those rates for food and all those other things and stand in those lines, we can't let them have a bad time just because they're in a bad mood. We have to deal creatively with their bad mood and see that when they leave, they had as good a time as possible.
That makes sense. I was going to say, as we're giving the prices away, I was going to say, please don't tell anybody the prices. I'm trying to sell trips as well.
But fact is, you get the travel agent for free, folks.
That is true. Yeah, thank you for that plug. That was awesome. But no, yeah. I mean, it makes perfect sense. And I've been in there where, you get they pick the guy to be that guy with the tattoos and the sunglasses and the earrings, and he just stands stone faced and he won't do anything. And sometimes they're the funniest. That's the funniest show that you're going to see because the crowd just reacts to that every time they show the guy on the screen. I love it. I'm always, I'm the guy because I have a shaved head and I'm clean shaven. Always I'm picked whenever they tell the Monsters Inc. story. I'm Mike Wazowski, always. And
you want to have some fun. The best shows we had. There's a lot of great stuff that we came up with, but the thing that I always enjoyed the most was we pick a guy for that guy, and the fella would get up and move, and so that he wouldn't be in the same place.
Okay.
And he, of course, has no idea that we can track him.
Right.
So that no matter where he moves, we find him. And boy, that's funny.
Yeah, it's not a fixed camera, right? That's on that one seat. I mean, you could just
well, the other secret is we can zoom in on any place in that theater except the first row or the back row.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'll have to remember that for when I go next time. I'll sit in the back row because, like I said, I'm always Mike Wazowski, and then they say Mike with one eye, and I have to close my one eye, and
right.
It happens every single time that I'm in there. One other thing I wanted to get to before I let you go, I saw, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. It's the internet that I'm kind of relying on to get this information, but I saw that you were somehow, I don't know if you were in it, if you were tied up or with the Walt's Frozen Head film. And
thank you for bringing that up.
No, of course.
Yeah, I'm. There's a film that's called "The Further Adventures of Walt's Frozen Head." It's currently in post-production, and I got the title role.
Very cool. So you are Walt in the.
I am.
You were at least Walt's Frozen Head.
I am Walt Disney's Frozen Head. It's the story of a young man who works in the park, who one day finds himself down in the bowels of the park underneath the Magic Kingdom, where he stumbles on the place where they're keeping Walt's Frozen Head, which the company thaws out every year for a few days so they can consult him on items and make sure everything's working the way he wants it. And Walt convinces the guy to take him upstairs to look at the park. And it's a kind of a buddy comedy. It's not really so much about Walt going to the park, although that does happen. It's more about the message of the film. It's kind of like a Frank Capra movie. It's about letting go of things and moving on in your life and letting go of the past. And so it's fascinating. The special effects are incredible. It's hopefully going to be out in a couple of months. We're going to have it on the film, the different festivals that are around the country, film festival circuit, and then it'll be available online. If you look up Walt's Frozen Head online, you'll find out information about it.
Yeah, I've followed the Twitter account for quite a while, and it's very, very funny. And there's I don't know who runs it, but there's some always great one-liners, and that's actually how I first heard about it. And then I looked it up in Orlando Sentinel one time, and your name was attached to it. And I was like, oh my God, look at this. So I thought that was really cool. What, if any, have you heard from Disney at all about your involvement in it? Or are they kind of just being quiet about it?
Not a thing. Some of the footage was shot surreptitiously in the Magic Kingdom, but not very much. And our director has done a wonderful job of making sure that everything is kosher with the Disney people. We have not heard from them. I don't expect we will. The film is not blasphemous or mean-spirited in any way. We do get our little digs in on some topics, but it's really a very wholesome movie, and I think that the hardcore fans such as yourself are going to be very happy with it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been looking forward to it, and I will definitely see it when it's, wherever I can see it, when it's online or wherever. I'm very excited about it. Anything like that, the Disney nerds like me will fall in love with, I think. As long as it's not Escape from Tomorrow, which...
No.
I don't know if you had a chance to see that.
Don't even bring it up. Just walk away, Phil. Walk away.
Yeah, I mean, that was... I had someone send me a copy of that, and I got into about 10, 15 minutes of it, and I was like, man, this is a strange idea for a movie. So that's not, I don't know how much of that you saw, but it wasn't one that I could really...
I saw the whole thing. It was beautifully shot. It looked terrific. The black and white footage looked terrific.
Oh, it was cool looking. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the story was a disaster.
It was. Well, Ron, thank you so much for giving up your time. And I know it was a little later than I said, so thank you for being awesome with the scheduling and everything. And I want to tell everybody again, From Dreamer to Dreamfinder, a life and lessons learned in 40 years behind a name tag is available everywhere, Ron said. I'm looking at it right now on Amazon, and I've already ordered it on audiobook because I will listen to it on the treadmill
Great.
I'm training for the Dopey Challenge again for this year, so I want to listen to it during my training run Saturday morning. So thank you again so much for being on. This was a lot of fun for me.
Thank you, Phil. I had a great time.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Ear to There podcast. Thank you again so much to my guest, Ron Schneider. It was very cool to have him on to talk all things Dreamfinder and Epcot and where the Disney parks are headed these days. And how awesome was it that he's on the opening team of Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor, right? I've said it before, and I will say it again. The cornier the joke, the easier you will get on that show. I have two jokes for you. I think I've said them before, but I'll say them again. These two are almost guaranteed to get you picked on that show. The first one is, why does a seagull fly by the sea? Because if he flew by the bay, he'd be a bagel. I cracked myself up. The second one is, where does a general keep his armies? In his sleeveys. All right, enough of the shenanigans, but I can't guarantee, but if you use those, there's a pretty good chance that your joke will make the show. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you and taking the time to listen. If you do enjoy the show, if you do listen each and every week, please do me a favor and subscribe to the show and then rate and review it. There's an easy step-by-step guide for you over at eartotheretravel.com/iTunes. That will walk you through the process on how to subscribe so you get the shows instantly downloaded to your whatever your listening device is each week. And it will also show you how to rate and review the show so more people can see it and more people can listen. I thank you in advance, and I really appreciate that. All right, so just remember, there will be a new episode of the Ear to There podcast each and every Monday morning, as well as a new episode of the Ear to There podcast, Walt Disney World Word of the Week, and that will be each and every Wednesday morning. So until next time, thank you again so much for listening. Have a fantastic week. Bye-bye.